Now that Donald Trump is in the rear-view mirror, Fauci finally admits that schools should have been open all the time. With Biden set to take office, I'm pretty sure there's no chance Fauci will finally admit that China is responsible for the pandemic. I mean, after all, his kids gotta eat, right? I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. And today, the word hypocrisy is not a big enough word for what we're seeing from the Democrats. It helps, I suppose. It makes it really easy to be a Democrat, when a hypocritical Democrat, when the media won't report on your hypocrisy, won't call it out. But you now have Dr. Anthony Fauci, New York Mayor Bill de Blasio, two of the worst shills for keeping schools closed. The cruelty of Mayor de Blasio back at the end of the summer, you'll recall, when moms and dads were clamoring to get their kids back, that the moms and dads were having to stop working. One or both of them were having to give up work hours to be able to stay home with the kids. This is just absolutely cold-blooded de Blasio saying, nope, not going to do it. Even though many other schools in New York had done it and many other schools across the country had done it, we knew what we know now. We knew that kids really didn't get infected and kids really didn't spread that. We knew that 4 months ago. We knew that 6 months ago. Nevertheless, you would think now that Donald Trump, the beast has been slain. Because as I said to you earlier this week, the coronavirus for the Democrat Party was really the Trump virus. Coronavirus was a symptom of Donald Trump. Remember how many times they blamed him for it? Remember how they still blame him for all the deaths? It was Donald Trump who wanted the schools open. And people like de Blasio and Fauci weren't going to do it, in part because opening the schools would have demonstrated normality, would have put kids back where they belong, and the whole country would have seen how easy it was to do, and Donald Trump might have got a bump for it. This is why they've done it.
So everything seems to have changed overnight, seemingly, because on Sunday was the day of activity where Anthony Fauci and Mayor Bill de Blasio took action and said, you know what? Kids should be in school. So Anthony Fauci went on ABC's This Week to share his lovely opinion.
If you look at the data, the spread among children and from children is not really very big at all, not like one would have suspected. So let's try to get the kids back, but let's try to mitigate the things that maintain and just push the kind of community spread that we're trying to avoid. Close the bars and keep the schools open is what we really say.
What do you mean, sir, that unlike what you would expect? Unlike what you'd expect. Why would you expect it when it's never happened? Why would you expect it for the entire year of 2020 when we were undergoing COVID? It never dealt with little kids. It never had a disparate impact on children. Children were never really able to spread it. What do you mean data? What do you mean, sir, by data? I'm getting so sick and tired of you quasi-scientific morons lecturing us about, look at the data. You had this data 3 months ago. You had this data in August. You had this data in March and April and May, almost as soon as this began. What are you talking about? That all of a sudden now we have data that shows this? The one thing Fauci's perhaps got going for him is that he's not Bill de Blasio. I mean, Fauci didn't have the ability to actually shut down one of the big, great cities of the country's kids' ability to go. He didn't have that power, although the media would have you believe he did. You want to see the real problem? The clown show? Take a look at this.
All K-5 programs, whether they're standalone or part of a bigger school, those grades will come back, and those pre-K, 3K centers. Why? Because we know, first of all, studies consistently show that younger kids are having less of a negative experience, and there's less concern about the spread when it comes to younger kids. Also, the demands that our parents are going through, and I feel for all our parents who are experiencing so many challenges right now, how important it is for them to have their younger kids in school, how important it is at that age, both educationally and socially, but also in terms of how parents juggle all the challenges in their life.
Now you care about parental struggle. Now you care about how this is the impact of all your bad decisions have been. And you care now because now that Trump's out of office, the Trump vaccine has come. It's called a stolen election. What was the vaccine that we needed to deal with the Trump virus. It was who knew? It was a simple stolen election. And now that you've got it, all the things that you've been feeding off of, all the parasitical ways you've been bloating yourself with all this power against the parents, against kids, against people, against private businesses, now you got no one to blame other than you, unless you want to start blaming Sleepy Joe. And de Blasio won't be able to start blaming Joe until January of next year. So here we go.
I just like what Fauci said in his statement with close the bars and keep the schools open, because the two work together. If you keep the bars open and close the schools, the parents still have that outlet, since they're having to homeschool their kids. But if you close the bars and keep the schools open, then we're okay. We're still balanced. So that's what I really appreciate from Dr. Anthony Fauci.
That's a great observation, because notice what's the real difference between the public school and the bar. The bars are private businesses. The schools are government property, which means we government control what goes on in the school. We don't control what private citizens do. So we're not going to let private citizens have their way. We're going to force everybody to use government to warp private businesses. The comments are so shameless, so self-serving, so hypocritically obvious to anybody. These are such obvious acts of rank and gross hypocrisy that even the mainstream media and their subordinates in the tech companies are not going to be able to hide this from the American people.
From epidemiologist to mayor to the House of Representatives, where we have Representative Ayanna Pressley from Massachusetts, one of the squad members, one who kind of got in there a little late, but then now she's so hip and cool with them. She wants to cancel student debt, as does Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Elizabeth Warren, Chuck Schumer, pretty much anyone on the left. But she is really pushing forward with her efforts to cancel all college student debt.
So again, by a stroke of a pen, executive action, day one, the Biden-Harris administration can cancel student debt, and that will go a long way in ensuring an equitable economic recovery. But again, it is also a racial justice issue, and that matters against the backdrop of this national reckoning on racial injustice.
I love how confident she is that the president, how clearly this is a sitting congresswoman who does not understand how the Constitution works. That the president of the United States simply has the ability to write off federal debt with a pen. That Biden from day one can sit down and write an executive letter saying, you know what? Trillions of dollars in student loan debt are owed to the federal government. I, as the overseer of the taxpayers' money, I'm just going to give that all away. I'm pretty sure that that's not something he can do.
Well, they've been pretty active on the Twitter. Ayanna Pressley, AOC, even Elizabeth Warren, or someone on her staff. Let's be honest, she doesn't know how to use Twitter.
She's busy making powwow chow.
She can't make that either. Elizabeth Warren actually tweeted and then retweeted. It was retweeted by Ayanna Pressley. The following: canceling student debt would transform the lives of millions of people and help dig our economy out of this crisis. And at Joe Biden and at Kamala Harris can get it done on day one. Now that's Elizabeth Warren tweeting that, and then it was retweeted by Ayanna Pressley. Now Elizabeth Warren, who has been in the Senate long enough and has been, what was she, a law professor, I believe, at which university? I think it's one of those bigger ones.
You mean,
yes.
She was a law professor that position she stole for a Native American woman, right?
Yes, and then she was also a teacher. You would think she would know what canceling student debt, how that would work, but maybe because she's not an economics professor or economics major like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she may not understand how canceling all student debt, all 1.7 trillion of it, is going to, she says it's going to help dig our economy out of the crisis, not put us even
as an English professor, that one got me too. I even noticed that. She's saying that if we clear $1.7 trillion of money that should be coming to the government, and we don't collect it, then we really expect that all that debt is going to be returned to us in what they spent. Yes, it's going to take those people, to stimulate this economy. How many decades would it be before they were able to spend that kind of money to get us back to where we started?
At this point, who knows? That feels, But, it's going to transform the lives of millions of people, and also the other millions of people who are going to have to pay for it.
Yes.
So which millions are you putting
Yeah, and
out
so if
there?
you're somebody who paid off your own debts, did you have student loans?
No, I didn't.
You didn't even take any. I didn't either. But if you're somebody who actually took out student loans to go to college within the last 10 years and then paid them off.
Well, yeah, you technically I took out a little loan, but it was just in case I needed it, and I paid it off immediately upon graduation, and then my credit score was dinged because I actually paid it off.
Paid it off too fast. Exactly right.
So that's.
But if you're somebody who took out a lot of loans and then actually did the right thing and paid them back, what are you saying right now? You don't get it. What do you get for that?
SOL is what you get.
And the other question is how far back do we go?
Yes.
Do we retroactively? Shouldn't we, in the name of fairness? What if you're an African American who paid off his student loans 15 years ago, hundreds of thousands of dollars, so he could become a lawyer or a doctor? Why doesn't, in the name of racial justice, he get it, as opposed to the spoiled little white cheerleader who's got $30,000 to major in kinesiology, right?
Kinesiology is a good one.
Well,
you can get a good job in kinesiology.
It's the whole University of Michigan football team majors in it. How bad
all athletes major in
there
kinesiology.
That's what I'm getting.
But
the
they also
athletes.
then go on to make millions. Anywho, because they're playing sports. But of all the people who tweeted, I think the most profound simply did come from Ayanna Pressley herself when she said, cancel it. I'm so inspired now. Now, if you would like to sign a petition, because we always have petitions, as Presley retweeted, the link to cancelstudentdebt.now. It has more than 27,000 signatures, and according to its description, today the $1.7 trillion student debt crisis exacerbates economic inequality, prevents wealth building, and stifles the dreams of millions of Americans. But I thought the American dream died. I thought we didn't have that. It's racist.
It was all a lie, right?
It's all a lie. Student debt cancellation will greatly contribute to an equitable economic recovery from COVID-19, jumpstart our economy, and help close the racial wealth gap.
What does it tell you that Ayanna has me actually being the more woke of the two? What does that tell you? That her stupidity has driven me to a place of uber wokeness.
"2020 is a constant state of confusion and, I don't know, just downright sorrow. But my confusion at this moment with 2020 is, why is it that chemistry teachers all of a sudden are getting so involved in politics, more than they ever have in the past? Because we have a chemistry teacher from H.B. Woodlawn School, which is part of the Arlington Public School District in Arlington, Virginia. That chemistry teacher decided, you know what, I'm so woke that I'm going to bring George Floyd, George Floyd, which kicked off 2020 of the chaos. I'm going to bring it in a classroom in the form of a test question. So here's the question that said chemistry teacher, which we don't have the name, put onto a chemistry test. Question number 2. George Floyd couldn't breathe because a police officer put his blank George's neck. Now you may be confused. We're missing a word or two. I don't get it. Dr. Duke, do you know the answer to this?
I have no idea what I'm looking at. Cadmium on George's neck?
Incorrect.
No?
That would be 2 words. It's 1 word. You said cadmium on George's neck.
Cadmium.
Oh, you just said cadmium?
Yeah. Hydrogen.
Put his hydrogen...
Nitrogen.
Incorrect.
I'm trying to reel off what I know about the periodical table here.
Periodic
Sheldononium.
table. Incorrect. All of your answers.
Aluminum.
You're awful. You are not a chemistry major in any sort of the imagination.
What is the right
is
answer, Miss Petrick?
neon.
Neon.
He put his neon.
Oh,
George's.
it's a pun.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's a freaking pun.
So he put his neon.
If we've learned nothing from the Dr. Duke Show over the last 2 years, it's that every aspect of school now has to become an opportunity to teach social justice. And making a pun about neon, George's neck, I guess is how you do it.
Well, this question quickly circulated amongst the students and the parents, and one student alleged in a social media post that some students responded with white silence. Ooh. So the student on social media said, there's no diversity in my school, and apparently there was a bunch of white silence when this happened this morning. White students were making excuses or seemed too tired to talk about it.
Here's a question for you.
Shame on those people. That's disgusting.
Here's a question for you, Katie. What if those white kids complained that George Floyd had found his way into their chemistry test. I'll bet you the same little snowflake would have said, how dare these white kids speak out against social justice in chemistry?
And the simple fact that we still now have George Floyd being put onto test period or being talked about in school still again after months and months of it over and over and over. No wonder the kids seem too tired to talk about it.
Well, it's not even that. They're not tired. They're scared to death. You keep telling them white silence is death, but you have an obligation as a white person to speak out. You keep lecturing these kids that their silence is complicit with violence. And then when they open their mouth, they're told, shut up, white boy. This is not your fight. It's this endless heads I win, tails you lose, anti-logical argument garbage that social justice has devolved into. And I go back to what I said before. If some white kid got offended, this is chemistry. My chemistry is I came to this class to study chemistry, not social justice. Why are you working George Floyd into your questions? I guarantee you the same snowflakes would have come out and said, how dare this white person speak out? How dare this white person raise their voice to challenge social justice and chemistry? And when they don't say anything at all, white silence.
Well, the good thing, I guess, is this teacher who decided to be so woke was suspended. And according to the superintendent, they are processing the incident. So we'll see what happens with it. Probably nothing. Teacher will go back. Probably nothing will happen. But
the problem was that the George Floyd question on the chemistry test was a pun. It was a joke. If you had not done that, instead of saying, how much does an empty grave weigh, you said, how much does a dead George Floyd weigh, you might have got away with it. But the neon, N-E-O-N, was was an element too far.
It's time for some real education. Italian Renaissance artist Titian created an oil-on-canvas painting called The Equestrian Portrait of Charles V. The painting was done between April and September of 1548. This is the time that Titian was at the imperial court of Augsburg. The painting itself is a tribute to Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor. More specifically, it was a tribute to the victory against the Protestant armies in the April 1547 Battle of Mühlberg.
If you're a pro-Reformation guy, then probably the figure from the Renaissance you hate more than any other outside of Martin Luther would be Charles V. Charles V was the Pope-elected Holy Roman Emperor who took it upon himself, he was a Spanish king as well, who really took it upon himself to counter the Reformation. He literally waged bloody war for 20, 30 years across Europe, and quite successfully, trying to crush Protestant armies. So if you are a anti-papist, this guy is probably not your favorite. To the Catholic League, to the counter-Reformation Catholics, King Charles was a hero for the exact opposite reasons. He defended the faith. And so you can see how these internecine Christian wars in the 16th century over Reformation versus traditional Catholicism raged. But over and above the politics of religion, we see Titian's really great work. When politics gets out of control, we'd like to hope that art can step in and give us something beautiful to look at. And this is a beautiful painting. You think about the palette of Titian. Titian is known for his deep and luxurious reds. Here, in creating a portrait, an equestrian portrait of the great warrior Charles V of Spain, you see the darkening clouds that are lowering in the distance. He's just scattered those clouds by defeating a large Protestant army. And note, farther in the distance, the sun has begun to peek out, right? That the sun of, in his mind, from his perspective, liberation has begun to come back to the otherwise universally Catholic world. And everything about the painting is really kind of, in some ways, you would not recognize this as a typical Titian. If you look at the great paintings of Titian, you wouldn't necessarily look at this and say, oh yeah, that's the great master. But he's much more contained, Titian. Of course, it was painting in Italy. He was painting in the court of Charles. Titian himself was Catholic, so the propaganda aspects of the painting are still there from a Catholic perspective. But there's something really genuinely beautiful about the way the horse is constructed, by the dignity of the horse, the firm browed insistence upon it, the way it prances, and the serenity of King Charles is unrivaled. He's got the lantern jaw of most of the kings of Spain from centuries of inbreeding. That lantern jaw always shows you a Spanish king in the 16th century, but his eyes and his forehead is as resolute in the struggle as his jaw is as well. So it's a really interesting picture, one that you wouldn't necessarily immediately recognize as one of the great masters of the Mannerist Renaissance, Titian, but nevertheless a great work of art.
All right, before we go, just a reminder that the best way to keep up with our various shows at Freedom Project is to follow us on Parler. So take just a moment out of your day today and go follow at Duke Pesta, at Katie, and at Freedom Project. Thank you ever so kindly. And if you're a fan of the show, please consider a one-time tax-deductible donation to support our Patriot Club and keep this show going. And as a little bonus, you can enjoy all the freedom that comes with having the awesome Freedom Tumbler, just like we have on set here. So all you have to do to get signed up is visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us. Now we're going to wrap things up with the fun fact of the day. It's a chemistry fun fact, because I like chemistry. No, I don't. But water expands as it freezes, which is unlike many substances, okay? So an ice cube actually takes up about 9% more volume than when you just pour that water into the tray.
And that's going to do it for this show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke, and she's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.